We are live.
All right, welcome to the House Judiciary Committee this Tuesday morning, May 19th. We're going to take a look at an amendment to S208. I think folks will see that it's quite familiar, but we'll have, who's going to present this? Daisy, are you going to walk us through the purpose or introduce us to the amendment? I mean, we know the language fairly well. We've spent quite a bit of time with this language, but thank you for being here. Identify yourself for the record.
Thank you for having me. Representative Rebecca from House Healthcare Committee. I represent Winooski. And I'm bringing this amendment forward with Representative McGill. We really appreciate the work of this committee, have deep respect for everything you've done over the last couple of years to really protect the folks in my community, Winooski, which is incredibly diverse. We house a lot of immigrants. I represent a significant refugee community and people who are really impacted by this issue of masked agents coming into communities. So thanks for your work on it and your diligence and bravery to face issues that are much larger than just in this building. I'd like to continue that conversation outside this room. My constituents would like me to have a vote on it. I think there are, as witnessed by the work that you all have done the last couple of years, these issues around immigration impact the entire state of Vermont. And I think representatives from the state of Vermont outside this room need to vote on this. I think those laws that we looked at earlier this biennium really recognize the fear and uncertainty and even abuses of power that are concerns across the state. The issue that I found is that none of those pieces of legislation really address this specific issue of federal agents being masked. And when I talk to my local law enforcement agents, it's challenging for them to be working in an environment where they're potentially dealing with people who have not coordinated any sort of operation with them in advance. They're not sharing data afterward. And people like myself are going to my municipal officers and saying, I heard 9 people were abducted. What's the story? They have no clue because there's no collaboration with federal officers, no data sharing, and I'm not okay with that. And I really appreciate that you recognize the danger of people being masked and unidentified, but we need to extend that to federal officers, not just for the benefit of folks like myself, but also for the safety of our law enforcement officers and for the principle of accountability. I don't think accountability stops with our state or local law enforcement officers. We deserve that from our federal officers. I deserve that, you deserve that, our constituents deserve it, and our local and state law enforcement officers deserve it when they're expected to stand by and watch people conduct their operations that they're completely unaware of. So I just want to reiterate, this isn't anti-law enforcement. It reinforces the professionalism and it strengthens. It's intended to strengthen the trust between our communities and the police. This amendment was drafted, as you all well know, with substantial exemptions and operational protections specifically to avoid interfering with legitimate law enforcement functions. Many local law enforcement officers themselves are deeply uncomfortable with situations where unidentified federal operations occur without communication or coordination. Our local officers should not be left trying to determine in real time whether a masked armed individual is a legitimate federal agent or a dangerous impersonator. They deserve accountability. This amendment protects officers as much as it protects our residents because confusion and mistrust can create danger for everyone involved. This is one of those moments where I think our constituents are less interested in procedural arguments, and they're more interested in whether us as elected officials are willing to respond to what they're experiencing. And so the question is really simple. Should armed individuals exercising law enforcement authority in Vermont be identifiable to the public and local law enforcement agencies? I think we've always, with the support of this committee and leadership of this committee, had to balance public safety with civil liberties and community trust. So this amendment, I hope, can continue that tradition. And I hope that we will continue to discuss constitutionality of this outside this room, as others are doing in other states.
Thank you. So for the committee, do we need to just have a walkthrough, or are we familiar with the language of the amendment? Because if, from what I can understand, and having reviewed it, and perhaps Sophie can weigh in on this if I'm wrong, is it is the same as what we had as version 2.1, with one exception, which is that the non-severability clause was taken out. Sophie, could you identify it? Just in case we have any
So
questions.
Sophie Sabatney for the Office of Legislative Counsel. I believe there was one other change, which was also to use the same language in section E on statewide policy. And that was to mirror what the 3.1 that came out of the committee. So it's a combination of 2.1 and 3.1, and the 3.1 piece is the policy piece.
Okay. Any questions for Sophie or for Daisy? So not seeing, the reason why that I pushed us to move away from having the feds in here, and I won't go deeply into this, was the issues of constitutionality. I feel it is all of our obligation, but even more so this committee's obligation to really look at constitutional issues. And in the past, when I felt there's been strong arguments, even if we don't know for sure where it's going to land, I have certainly made that point and went ahead with the bill supporting it. But this one, I think the arguments are very weak. So, yeah, I agree. I definitely agree that what we're seeing with federal agencies in not cooperating, not collaborating, not identifying themselves is absolutely something that needs to be addressed. But I just don't think that states, including Vermont, can impose such restrictions consistent with the Constitution. So with that, I would take a motion to find the amendment, draft number 5.1 to S208, unfavorable.
Moved.
For a second.
Second.
So all those,
We haven't even seen.
oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Let's have a discussion. Thank you for the reminder of how this actually works, the process.
Look at it.
Eventually I'll understand. So,
And I just wanted to say that I will vote to support the amendment, and I wanted to explain why, because I really respect everything you just said about the likelihood that I understand the likelihood of the constitutionality of states being able to enforce or enforce such standards. However, I remember really clearly when I was a high schooler, different classes, sitting in ninth grade humanities and really great social studies class called Four Revolutions, and just learning about different conflicts and wars throughout history, and the horrible atrocities that were part of those conflicts. And I remember every time thinking, I hope that if I had been alive then, I would have been part of whatever group it was, or whatever individuals were doing everything they could to stop government overreach, government, World War II, I remember feeling very passionately about genocide. And this is not that, I'm not comparing the two, but I'm just trying to make the point that for most of my life, all of my memory in my life, I have hoped that if I found myself in this moment, where I know what's being done is wrong, that I would do everything I could to try to push back against that and to correct what I think the injustices that are happening. And so because there's even a sliver of hope that this could withstand a constitutional challenge, I'm compelled to vote to move the conversation forward and to just do everything we possibly can, or to try everything we possibly can.
Karen?
So definitely been thinking about this vote a lot, and I will say, it's challenging for me because, like folks have shared, I feel like there's multiple sides to consider with this. And for me, what I have done is taking it into the larger context of the work that we've done this session for issues like this. And I think to S209, I think to H849, we've made some real big achievements. And I know in other states, they've put all these pieces together, and our approach was to do them separate. And I feel like that's created the situation for us where we have this one piece that I agree, I think has very weak arguments to be constitutional, and it's all on its own. And that's what makes it very hard for me to support this. I also really believe that we do need to address masking with law enforcement in Vermont and identification. And I feel like the best way that we're going to get there is through the statewide policy. And that's who folks interact with the most in our state. And I'm worried if this isn't included, that it will lead to a veto and not cross the finish line. And I really want to make sure we have something that works. So I don't see myself being able to support this, even though I know how important it is to folks.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat everything that everyone else has said, but I will be voting to find it unfavorable. It's a really difficult vote. I don't think that the conduct that we're seeing across the country by federal agents is appropriate just for ensures any kind of confidence in the system. That said, I think there's a decision that needs to be made about whether we consider and allow consideration of constitutional issues on bills to inform how we vote and what bills we support. I feel strongly that we need to do that. And if we didn't, then I don't know why we would take so much testimony and so much consideration on the constitutionality of any bill we take up. And so to protect the process, to protect the legitimacy of other decisions that we make on other bills where constitutional questions are raised, and also to consider the long view on this and the relationship between state and federal power, I'm going to be voting to find it unfavorable.
I am going to support the amendment for a number of reasons. One is with Connecticut and New York taking action in the last few weeks, it's hard for me to tell our constituents that Vermont is not willing to take the same risks. There has been an issue of law enforcement, of people who were posing as law enforcement in Vermont. And this issue doesn't get raised a lot with this bill, but it's really important that people know legitimately if somebody is actually a law enforcement officer or not. And I think we've heard that constitutional experts disagree. And there is, as Representative Angela said, a glimmer of hope that it would be found constitutional. And I too don't want to be one of the people that said didn't try to do something.
So we have a motion for us to find the amendment unfavorable. Yeah.
Can I just add something? I was listening in the car on the way up. So I just want to, I think a really important aspect of all of this came to the House floor. It seems like last week, but maybe it was the week before, about respecting the committee's work and respecting the leadership from the chair. And, all 10 of us are on the table. And of course, Representative Chrissy, who listens in virtually. We've taken countless hours of testimony on this, working with witness, speaking to constitutional experts who actually did not agree that this was constitutional. And the point that I keep coming back to is that deep respect that we have for you, Chair, and for the work of the committee, and also to Representative Goodnough's point of respecting the process and making sure that we get this right. And so for that reason, I'll be voting no and finding this unfavorable. Or voting yes, rather, and find it unfavorable.
Anybody else? Not seeing anybody else.
Chair, can you just clarify how we're voting? You feel like you can't.
The way I'm going to ask it is, all those who wish to find this unfavorable, please raise your hand. Those who find it favorable, please raise your hand. Find it favorable, please raise your hand.
Sorry.
So 9-2-1. All right, thank you very much. So real quickly, for folks before we break and go on the floor, supposedly 208 is not going to be on the floor until this afternoon, unfortunately. We are expecting an amendment on 193. I've looked at it and nothing jumped out at me as terrible. The amendments from Human Services. But having said that, I want to make sure that that's the case. So I'm going to invite some testimony on that amendment, and we're going to try to fit it in whenever we have a break this afternoon. Don't have the language on the amendment yet, but I assume that it's going to be soon. So just stay tuned. We do have a couple other witnesses for this afternoon on the animal cruelty bill. Favorite bill in here. And let me just see what.
Are we down to that?
Well, there's an amendment. And then also the youthful offender proceedings, which is actually on the floor, but I think we're gonna have to postpone that because I think we need to work something out. I think what came from the Senate undermined some of the stuff we did on behalf of victims in that. So we have to figure that one out. And I think needs to be a discussion with the chair of Senate Judiciary. So stay tuned. We do have a few witnesses this afternoon. We'll try to fit them in, and hopefully we
Don't melt.
don't have to strip down to our t-shirts. So we're offline.